So the first question, there are three questions. I'll let you know what they are so you'll know to situate some of your responses either by the panelists or the audience. The first question is, what is needed to stimulate the Quebec economy in the short term and the long term view? The second question, how should the English-speaking community best play a role in Quebec's economy? And the third question, what is the most important or the most urgent issue facing the economic development of the English-speaking community today? So you can see we move from a broad context of Quebec society and economic development, more specifically to the role of the English-speaking community, and then more specifically still to the urgent issues that are facing that. And I think the board is here and the community table is here to receive the enlightened view of the panelists as well as the interaction and the feedback from the other audience members here and online, again, to sort of feed an ongoing dialogue. So without further delay, the first question being what is needed to stimulate the Quebec economy in the short term and the long term view. And I thought we'd start maybe with an entrepreneur in his own right, Peter, maybe just to launch his initial views around that, and then the other panelists, as you will, to jump in, and then we'll open up to the audience. Peter, if you would.
I have a tendency to be an optimist by nature, so that's kind of where I come from with most things that I do. I think Quebec, actually, we're in an incredibly powerful position to collectively to take advantage of our sort of status as being different from the rest of North America, and I think that that's a strength. I think that's that gives us a huge opportunity to develop. We've seen that take place already in a lot of our more cultural parts of what Quebec is. You know, I don't think I have to explain to this audience what I'm talking about when we think of Cirque du Soleil and other things and the sorts of things that go around in this city. So, now that's not obviously dealing with lumbering or all of the unemployment that has impacted communities that are dependent on those sorts of resources. But by and large, I feel that Quebec is a very strong, viable place, and we should be trying to find ways to take advantage of our strengths. Now, I'm in the beer business, and so therefore that's something I understand. I don't know many other businesses. But the beer business itself, we've seen a phenomenal growth within Quebec of the small breweries. And I think that there's parallels between what we do in our business in beer and what we see in the agro business generally. I think that the produits de terroir, the specialty cheeses that come out of Quebec, which I think easily rival the sort of products in that category that come from France. I think we do things in an extraordinary way, in a way that people in Quebec can do. And I quite frankly don't think, and I think that's a huge advantage. And we should be finding ways to develop and strengthen those relationships. One relationship that I didn't see today with this group is contact with the Quebec Farmers Association. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's another alliance that could be forged is with the QFA, and they obviously have created a strong relationship with the UPA, the Union des Producteurs Agricoles. So there's other opportunities there, and perhaps there's our economic opportunities that could come from that in areas we don't really know about now. It's a very narrow slice of the question, but that's where I'm coming from on it. Mm-hmm.
So Peter's view, I guess, the notion of specific products and expertise that resides in Quebec and promoting that as a way of moving forward.
Yeah, of course, that's the very short way of saying you've got to develop a huge level, first of all, of courage amongst those people who have the opportunity of starting their own businesses. You're going to have a situation that supports financing small startup operations, that you have to have entrepreneurial skills developed amongst the population. I mean, the answer of that particular area, you know, it means a whole bunch of other things that have to go along with it, and the infrastructure's got to stand to be able to provide those services and financing and so on and so forth. So notwithstanding, as I'm very optimistic, I've gone through that process myself of starting a business. You know, I pretty much firsthand understand how it feels to writing your first $50,000 check when you still have a mortgage to pay, and that's scary. It's a scary way to spend one's life. But the reality is, there's huge opportunities. And Anglophones, and if I may skip to that, I know I'm moving too quickly to the second part. But we have Anglophones who have the ability to speak French competently. I think that's a whole other level of opportunity there too. So when I say Quebec has got some great opportunity, I also believe that the Anglophone population within Quebec have some skills which are also highly usable for the Quebec economy and to represent Canada in a broader context.
David, your professional challenge and the organization you work with at Bishops really is challenged with providing, I'm assuming here, providing entrepreneurial skills and capacity building for people to enter into the entrepreneurial world. And I guess with individual and collective mixed success, we would have to assume. So as those people come back, what's your perception of either professionally from your work or the response you get from the candidates that you work with? What would that sense of an urgent need be in terms of economic development in Quebec?
I think the first thing is I would want to explain a little bit of the context that we work in, because we're working in the townships where there are approximately 40,000 English, approximately 300,000 total population. We are a little bit unique in that we're formed by private business but sit on a campus, so we straddle between courses which we are involved in teaching, or in teaching entrepreneurship to all students from all faculties, and triangulating them to live businesses out there in the townships and with mentors. So in that context, I think the biggest thing, I guess I'm a bit of a stats person, and there's some stats that are out there that are pretty interesting, is that 92% of jobs come from small businesses, like what Peter started in Quebec. Secondly, we are in Quebec approximately half, through a very recent survey, a pan-Canadian survey, they found out that Quebec is starting about half the entrepreneurial businesses that other provinces are per capita, yet closing just as many. So we have some very interesting challenges, yet we as a province are working much harder. So I think in the question of really stimulating is about stimulating entrepreneurship, and that's what I'm so pleased to hear about, because we have this tremendous wealth of people, of knowledge, that really needs to be transferred down to a young entrepreneur. And that young entrepreneur could be a 50-year-old person or an 18-year-old person, and also at the same time exposing the students. So it's bringing people together and leveraging all this knowledge is I think the role and the answer to creating those 92% of the jobs in the future. And so I think the idea of trying to identify going into an area to stimulate the economy, it's like a business. You go into a business and some things are good, some things are bad. You go with the good and you get rid of the bad, or you push the bad aside, but you focus and I think we have a lot of winners. You're talking about the cheese. We have a fellow. We work with the MAPAC, which is the agribusiness, mentoring a young fellow who's won cheese awards internationally and supported. So I think what I'm so pleased to see here is this support, this will to support and to make things happen. And entrepreneurship is another interesting stat. 50% of kids going into college today don't want a full-time job or like a job with a company for the rest of their life. They don't even see it as interesting. What they see as interesting is it's a series of projects. Life's a series of projects. So entrepreneurship is about getting out of college, going to Tim Hortons, sitting down and figuring out a life plan, figuring out a plan. And that's what's reality. So entrepreneurship is the answer, whether it's an arts student in theater, whether it's, and we have, I think Peter's brought up a superb point, this point about Quebec culture. Coming from a hybrid family, French-English type of family, the advantages that we have as a population are just phenomenal opportunity. Citing the Cirque du Soleil, we as an English sort of the English, if I put my English hat on, we have this tremendous, we have a different cultural view which marries very well with the more creative or the Latin-based French-speaking culture. So, big opportunity.
Yeah. So